accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting of the City Council may be conducted via remote participation. And please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels and on the City of Somerville website, and will be available for future review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Councillor McLaughlin.
Here.
Councillor Davis. Councillor Scott.
Present.
Councillor Strezzo.
Present.
Councillor Klingon.
Present.
Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Councillor Burnley.
Present.
Councillor Gomez-Mocad. Councillor Kelly.
Here.
Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Present.
Councillor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
With 9 councillors present and 2 absent, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Pursuant to our Rule 32, let it be known that this City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We will begin this meeting with a moment of silence, and I'm going to start off with a moment of silence for Jim Ballantyne, who is the father of Mayor Ballantyne, who passed away recently at the age of 91. And Mayor Ballantyne shared a really beautiful tribute to her father, which I will not attempt to recreate here, except to say that Mr. Ballantyne lived a life that spanned many continents, many important historical times, and was really an amazing life. He was born in Scotland. He lived in England during World War II. He was a veteran of the armed forces and served as a helicopter mechanic in Vietnam, and at various times he also lived in Italy, in Greece, and in Germany. And as many of us know, 4 years ago he moved here to Somerville and lived with the family. He leaves behind 4 children, 2 of whom were adopted during the time that the family lived in Greece, including Mayor Ballantyne, who was not the mayor at that time. She was just Katiana then. And he also leaves behind 19 grandchildren, 24 great-grandchildren. On behalf of the entire City Council, I would like to extend our condolences and our thoughts to Mayor Ballantyne and her family, and ask that we think of her and them this evening. Were there other remembrances tonight? I know that the entire council would like to sign on to that. Councillor Wilson.
Mr. President, Councillor Davis isn't able to be here tonight, so he asked me to deliver a remembrance on his behalf. I'd like to remember Dr. George Golitis, who passed away earlier this month at age 92. Dr. George, as he was known, was part of the first generation born here in Somerville from families of Greek descent. And he always had immense pride in that cultural heritage. After attending Northeastern for his undergrad and then going on to Tufts Dental Program, George served our country in the Air Force and Air Force Reserve for years as a dentist. And then following his military service, George gave 50 years of his life to serving our community through his dental practice on Broadway in Ward 6. He loved his community. He gave a lot to our city over his life. His granddaughter, Stephanie, lives in West Somerville, so I want to offer my condolences to her and George's entire family and his many friends in our community and everywhere as they mourn his loss.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask us to remember tonight Joseph Clark of Somerville, literally of Somerville his entire life. He passed away about 10 days ago at the age of 94. He was born here, lived his whole life, and if anybody wonders about the pedigree of Joseph Clark, I'll let you know that he lived not far from the intersection of Joseph and Clark Streets, which were named after the Joseph Clark who owned that land once upon a time. He was Uncle Joe to his nieces and nephews, and in addition to his service in the Marine Corps, he was a member of the Somerville Fire Department for 32 years. I know he is missed by his colleagues, or missed by his family, and remembered by his colleagues fondly, so I'd ask that we keep him and his families in our hearts tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson.
Mr. President, I've got another one here. I'd also like to give a remembrance for Gene Diamato, who passed away earlier this month at 65. Gene was a longtime resident of West Somerville and worked many years at Somerville Public Schools, particularly at West Somerville Neighborhood School, where she worked in the community schools after-school program and also as a breakfast and lunch mother until her retirement in 2018. She also worked at McKinnon's Meat Market, where she was a familiar face up until her retirement 2 years ago. Jean and her late husband, Michael, were members of the Mystic Wellington Yacht Club and loved being out on the water. So my condolences to all of Jean's family and friends on their loss.
Thank you. Will everyone in the chamber please rise for a moment of silence? Thank you all. All right, colleagues, we are going to take a few items out of order. We're going to take 2 items for which there are public speakers. The first of those is going to be 4.1, which has to do with the Somerville Bike Kitchen. We'll then take up Councillor Klingen's resolution 4.9 relating to 311 workers. After that, a related order from Councillor Strezzo, 4.4, and then we're going to take up the Finance Committee report and a related item so we can discuss the Star Market TIF. So, Clerk, if you would please read the first item, which is not actually out of order. It is our first item on the agenda.
Yes, actually, the next item is item 1.3, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 26th, 2023.
Seeing no discussion, those minutes are approved.
Item 4.1 is a resolution by Councilors Ewan-Campen and Davis celebrating the work of the Somerville Bike Kitchen and supporting their efforts to find a new home in Somerville. Councilors
Pineda, Neufeld, Kelly, Burnley, Strezzo, the entire council would like to sign on. Thank you very much. So I want to thank Councillor Davis, who represents the Ward 6, where the Bike Kitchen is located, who unfortunately could not be with us in person tonight. But I am really excited to take this opportunity to shine a light on a really wonderful volunteer organization in our community, the Somerville Bike Kitchen. The Bike Kitchen was founded in 2015, and it is run entirely as a volunteer-led cooperative. They serve around 200 people each month, and what they do is teach people how to fix their own bikes. They do not do it for money. They operate on a sliding scale. They never turn away people for lack of funds, and this is really exactly the type of community organization that all of us want to see thriving and growing in Somerville. And especially, I would say, at a time when the council, when the administration are spending so much time and effort to increase bicycle safety in our city, it is really critical that we have these types of community organizations to teach people to take care of their own bikes, to train people how to use and maintain their bikes, and empowering people to feel more comfortable and safe on our streets. As many of you know, we put this in at this particular time because the physical home of the Bike Kitchen, where they've been since their founding, is not going to be available to them basically as of this summer. So they are launching a grassroots campaign to find a new space, and Councillor Davis and I and the council want to do everything that we can to uplift those efforts, to help spread the word to everyone in our networks, in the city, to anyone listening tonight, and to see if there is a way that the city itself can help. So I would like to sponsor Hannah Goldberg from the Bike Kitchen to speak for a few minutes about the Bike Kitchen. Please. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for our records.
Hey everyone, Hannah Goldberg, nice to meet you. I live right on Liberty Ave, so, and I've been in Somerville for about 6 years now, and it's kind of become a really big part of who I am, and especially the Somerville Bike Kitchen. So thank you all for the opportunity for allowing us to speak here and be present, and thank you, President. So the Somerville Bike Kitchen, as you all just eloquently heard from Ben, is looking for a new home come August. We've been on Summer Street, 339 in the rear. It's a cute little garage in the back since our 2015 founding. And it's given us a great home. We shared it with Sprout, a local nonprofit, and they've been generous enough to allow us to be there with no cost. But we serve almost 200 people a month since our founding. Like over 3,000 folks have come through our doors and have been empowered and inspired to learn how to fix their own bikes at a cost-effective level. We don't compete with local bike shops. They oftentimes reach out to us and say, like, here, can you help a lot of folks who might not have the means to fix their own bikes and also want that whole educational aspect. It's community building, it's green, it's directly in line with a lot of Somerville's current initiatives. So the ask here is really just to amplify the search for a new space for us, to understand the kind of work that we're doing, and also if you want to wheel around your bikes into the driveway and come hang out with a bunch of people who are really enthusiastic about bikes, you're more than welcome to do that. So thank you. I also have a lot of stickers, and I'm just going to leave those on the corner, and you can take them, do whatever you'd like with them, but appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you to everyone at the Bike Kitchen for the work you do in Somerville. Councillor Kelly, then Pineda Newfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank you all for what you do. I went to a college where we had a bike co-op on campus. So it was both a cooperative business that was run by students, but it was also students teaching other students how to fix their bikes. And I know how transformative that was for me as a young person to learn how to fix my own bike and have friends who could help me out. And I've heard countless stories from constituents about how much of a community you all have created here in Somerville. Your story is unfortunately not one of few, it's one of many. We in this council just a few weeks ago heard about SCAT TV and the media center potentially getting displaced from Somerville as well. So whether it's people for no or low cost helping their neighbors fix their bikes, or people creating community-based media, or the number of art spaces that have closed in this community, it's very clear that there is not enough space for our community to stay in our community. So whatever we, the council, can do to help you find space, but I would implore the administration, it is clear that we, the city of Somerville, need to be creating physical space for our community to exist, to play, to learn, to enjoy one another, and hopefully you will find a new home here in the city, but we need to be doing more to keep folks like yourself here.
And that's the goal. Thank you for saying that. Is like, we don't want to leave Somerville. So the Somerville Bike Kitchen should be here, and it should be serving the Somerville community. And with a lot of our kind of community anchor points being lost in the pandemic, this has been one space that people have felt comfortable coming back to. And me myself, I live alone. Like, this is a great way for me to actually just have some solid socialization. So that's really important. And I think we've kind of, you know, we talk about bikes, we talk about, you know, just learning how to fix things, being mobile, but there's a lot more to the Somerville Bike Kitchen for a lot of us who are there and for a lot of people coming through. We also partner with a lot of community organizations like Queers on Wheels, Femme Mechanics. A lot of the local bike shops are sending people our way, and the age range is wide, the socioeconomic status is wide. And it's really like one of those last pieces of like, this is true community building, community organizing, and we want to keep it that way. So again, like, any support you all can give, any word you can give, we're super grateful for it. And we want to keep on doing the work that we're doing.
Thank you.
Councillor Pineda Newfield.
Thank you, through you. Thank you so much for sharing what you're doing. Can you share a little bit more about the space that you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking for around, I think it's at a minimum 200 square feet. We've got a lot of tools, all the tools that a professional bike shop would have. And we need a place to store them. But we'd also like a little bit more than that, something with a slop sink, a bathroom, some outdoor space potentially to actually allow people to expand into the outside and set up stands right now. And you see pictures on our Instagram and on our website of the kind of space that we have. It spreads out. It is bumping in the warm weather. It's bumping inside too in the winter. People are very resilient in Somerville. I think it's just the New England winters. People are used to it now. But we're hoping to have a little bit more space than that 200, but the 200 is the minimum, and a bathroom and a sink would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking.
Councillor Klingon.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President, through you to the Bike Kitchen folks. Yeah, just echo what's been said. Thank you so much for what you do. Happy to help. My wheels are turning as we speak, no pun intended. But I would love to steal you and have you in Ward 4. I think that you'd be a great addition to, our neighborhood could really use a super cool place like yours. So we'll be putting our heads together, myself and Councillor Wilson, and hopefully we can welcome you to Ward 4.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Councillor Scott? Yeah.
I object. I'm stealing them for Ward 2. Thank you very much.
I love healthy competition. Really, it ends up well for us. So, yeah, we can make a deal here if we want.
Thank you. The resolution is approved. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Next item, please.
And that will bring us to the first item that we're going to take out of order, which is item 4.9, a resolution by Councilors Klingon, McLaughlin, Davis, Scott, Strezzo, Wilson, Burnley, Gomez-Mocad, Pineda-Neufeld, and Ewan-Campen, supporting the Somerville Municipal Employees Association in its efforts to bring the 311 operators into SMEA Unit B.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, and not my mistake if I know that Councilor Scott has brought this up many times, just in passing, even just with the negotiations that have been ongoing. So I want to just recognize him for that. What I didn't realize was that it's recently come to somewhat of an impasse, and we did receive word from Somerville Stands Together as well with representation from SMEA in that, and so I just wanted to make sure that we were on record supporting these 311 workers who are trying to unionize and in a way that is sort of going in their own direction of their own destiny, not going to be dictated to by management. And I think that's kind of the crux of it. So what I want to say is that I want to sponsor Ed Halloran, president of SMEA, to speak. I'm just laying the groundwork down. He can actually give you the update on what's happening. And I believe we have a statement from one of the 311 operators that Councilor Strezzo has that will read from that 311 operator themselves. So with that, I asked colleagues if they would allow any problems with Ed Halloran speaking.
Councilor Klingon is sponsoring, Councilor Kelly would like to sign on, and Councilor Klingon is sponsoring Mr. Halloran, who is here virtually. Mr. Halloran, you are unmuted. Welcome. You'll need to
Okay, how about that?
We hear you.
Excellent. So, look, I have to apologize. As you know, we have this snow issue that's ongoing for the next couple of days, back and forth. I want to give kudos to the DPW because, time and time again, shorthanded or not, whatever they're doing, they do a great job, so everybody could get to City Hall tonight. So I want to thank them. And I want to thank the great support that the City Council, is giving us here on this 311 issue. So I just want to say, for the record, my name is Ed Halloran, and I'm very fortunate to have served the residents of the City of Somerville for the past 30 years. I also have the high honor to represent the SMEA, Somerville Municipal Employees Association, as their union president for the past 15 years. I believe Ed Hardy is here tonight, and I know that there's a statement that City Councilor Strezzo will read. I know Eileen Costa is a longtime representative as well, 311, and she has probably written a statement too, as well as Camila Soares. So what I want to do is I want to thank the City Council for taking the time to recognize this very important matter. The SMA leadership and the 301 Constituent Services employees have petitioned to the Division of Labor to unionize 311 employees. The 311 employees must not be denied entrance into a union and not be denied placement into the bargaining unit where we believe they would rightfully be best served and represented. The union informed the mayor of the wishes of the 311 employees and asked that they be placed into Unit B, that's B as in boy, where most of our members are, approximately 200 of them. We requested 311 employees be granted the appropriate unit without a challenge from the city, but that was not the case. And frankly, we were very surprised by this. Even after filing with the Division of Labor, the city continues to oppose the 311 operators petition and is attempting to prevent them from holding an election to permit them to join Unit B. And our members make up about 31 divisions in the city, with most in Unit B, DPW, librarians, traffic and parking, inspectional services, school nurses. City Hall has elections, treasury, auditing, assessing, procurement, IT department, city clerks, and yes, we also have a member in the communications as well, communications department as well, with the clericals there. We have clericals in the police and in fire. So, adding 10 or 12 301 employees into Unit B would be a perfect fit for them, and we really do believe that. By the way, the SMA also has a Unit A as an apple, which is made up of supervisors. Unit D is approximately 20 miscellaneous positions, and of course, our school nurses are in newly created Unit C. The 301 employees, they're our friends, they're colleagues, and we've grown to work closely with them over these many years in serving the residents through work orders and processing them. There are similarities in their duties and working conditions with current Unit B SMEA clericals. And another statement that I want to make too, that I hear from time to time, is that Somerville is a union town. And, I always say to myself, well, not yet. It's really not yet, because, this is what we're hoping for. We're hoping that this happens. And, we hope that we'll get there tonight with your support. So we appeal to the City Council tonight and ask that you pass a resolution to allow the 301 constituent services employees to unionize, as it is their wishes and their legal right through a signed petition into the proper bargaining Unit B. Also, there's a statement that Rand Wilson articulately wrote. If you need be, I can read that as well. If you're satisfied with that, then I'll take any questions that anybody may have. I really can't talk much on the legal part of it, but if there's anything I can assist with. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Halloran. And the letter that you referenced from Rand Wilson is on our agenda as a public comment, and I have read it, and I know that my colleagues have as well. At this time, I'd love to hear the statement from a 311 worker that Councilor Strezzo has.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually have two statements. One of our 311 employees has to be working right now, so she's unable to be here in the chambers. So the first statement I'd like to read is by Camilla Soares. She says, Camilla Gaddy. And she says, "My name is Camilla Gaddy, and I am part of the 311 team. She won't be able to make tonight's meeting. She has a doctor's appointment, but she wants us to read it. She's been a member of the 311 Constituent Services team for almost 7 years now. Working with such diverse and amazing individuals brings her immense pride. During such chaotic pandemic times, even from afar, we stuck together and kept our servicing our constituents, averaging 60+ calls per day each, with same quality and respect. Our 311 team is a great microcosm of the community we proudly serve, a diverse group of hardworking people, immigrants, people of color, minorities, elders, single mothers. And as a city and constituents, we would like to feel included and have a safe haven, be treated with fairness by joining a union. We would like to count on your support. Thank you." Signed, Camila Gaddy. And then I'd also like to read a statement by Eileen Costa, who is also, is just working downstairs currently. That's right. So she specifically wants to join the union and wants 311 to be specifically in Unit B. The city wants us to join Union A, which is a tiny group with hardly any members. That would basically be useless, as it would take years to bargain for one item. She says, "We want to join Unit B, which has hundreds of members with a contract already in place. We work already with most of the Unit B staff in our dealings every day. We answer all calls for traffic and parking, and also place work orders and field calls for Treasury, DPW, City Clerk, ISD, Health, and many others. I know you already submitted a resolution for us, but I hope you will sponsor an additional one for us to specifically join Unit B." She says, I would be happy to answer any questions and or meet in person. All the best, Eileen Costa. And pardon my interjection here, but we have lots of people on social media and Twitter who are avidly responding to 311. These are the people that that receive your comments, your suggestion, your parking inquiries, your bike lane blockings, your trucks parking in illegal spots. These are the people that answer your calls and your requests to this. And they need your help, they need your support, they want to be in Unit B. Here's your chance to stand in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Strezzo. Councilor Scott, then Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the recognition. Also, thank you, Councilor Klingon, for the shout out. And thank you, Councilor Strezzo, for the letter from Ms. Costa, who I was delighted to see on my way into City Hall tonight, as I am always delighted to see her. You know, it's interesting because Eileen Costa should know, perhaps better than anybody, the importance of being in SMEA Unit B. I believe this is her 23rd year working as a 311 operator here for the city. Before 311 was the behemoth it is today, the expansive operation across social media accounts. It was just a place where people could call City Hall, one call to City Hall to find out. And across most of those years, the 311 operators were actually members of SMEA Unit B. I think it was only 10 years ago when they were removed from that bargaining unit. I'm not going to get into the history of how that happened, why that came to pass. But the 311 operators have been historically part of SMEA Unit B. So the idea that as they petition for union membership, that the city would say, absolutely not. You should not return to the bargaining unit from whence you came is completely counterintuitive to me. You know, it's an old saying, right? United we bargain, divided we beg. And I don't think it's suitable for Ms. Costa to have to beg, or for, honestly, any of these operators who are working across many languages, facing challenges far beyond the initial conception of the service, who have grown with the city of Somerville and have continued to serve city of Somerville. And in the case of Ms. Costa, that is the city that she was born in and continues to live in to this day. So they have my wholehearted support. I just wanted to provide the context that this is not such an outrageous request. It is simply asking for these workers to be able to return home for their representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is Ed Halloran still on the line?
I believe so. We have a feedback issue and we're both unmuted, so
Got it.
let's try to unmute Mr. Halloran, and you can unmute on your end, Ed.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Fantastic.
I am unmuted.
Still an echo? It's quite loud. Thanks, Ed Halloran, for being here today. Just a quick question. So, to be clear, the city, which we can call management in this situation, management is filed in opposition to the DLR saying that the SMEA employees should be in Unit A. Is that the opposition we're talking about? I'm trying to understand what the barrier is to filing for an election or for getting an election on the books.
Yeah, there's probably a little confusion there. The city is saying that they should be placed in a unit. They have not named any particular unit, not any at all. We're not exactly clear whether or not they want to put them in maybe something called Unit E. Who knows? We don't really know at this point. We had a pre-hearing, and you know, there really wasn't much that the city's attorney had to offer at the pre-hearing. So I don't believe it's Unit A. Unit A is supervisory, so it's they're probably thinking of maybe something like, you know, another unit, another letter, or just their own unit. That's what it sounds to me like they're looking at.
Got it. So the administration or management does not believe that this unit should be in bargaining Unit B, but is putting up a fight and not allowing you to go forward with an election to either put you in a unit that already exists or create a brand new That sucked. A brand new bargaining unit, is that correct?
That sounds correct to me. Yes, Counselor, yes.
It sounded like a yes to me. Thank you for that, Ed. This is a no-brainer, complete no-brainer. This set of employees could have a union in 4 weeks from now if management or the administration back down from this opposition and let these workers go forward with the union. I cannot imagine why you would put up such a insignificant opposition for 10 folks joining a collective bargaining agreement and joining a union. So thank you to my colleagues who have brought this issue forward. As somebody who deals with this on a daily basis in my work, I've seen folks as small as one ask to join bargaining units before and have management never put up an opposition. So the fact that a town that refers to itself as a union town is putting up an opposition to these 10 members joining a bargaining unit is bizarre to me. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. I hope the public can send in some support for these folks and echo the sentiments that my colleagues have raised tonight.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no further discussion, that resolution is approved. I want to thank you, Ed, and to the 311 workers who made those wonderful statements. Like many of the workers here in Somerville, this city would fall apart without 311, and we know it, and they know it. Ms. Costa is a constituent of mine, and we do not want to be on the wrong side of Eileen Costa as a city, so we got to get this sorted. Thank you all for raising the issue. And we have a related item that we're going to take up next, please.
The next item that we'll take out of order is item 4.4, in order by Councilor Strezzo that the Director of Human Resources provide a written demographic breakdown, including the age, gender, and race ethnicity of customer service representatives in the Constituent Services Department.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for permitting this to be taken out of order. So, little back history here. Last year, I did put forward a resolution in support of the 311 operators unionizing. But even before that, back in 2020, I did an information request to see the demographics and breakdown of constituent services, E911, the fire alarm department. And the reason I'm asking, so this is old data. A majority of the constituent services staff breakdown of gender was 77% female. And that again was 2020, but as far as I understand, the demographics are fairly consistent, but this information request, which, Mr. President, I'm asking be sent to Housing and Community Development, the breakdown is consistent, and if we pride ourselves as a city that is working hard to ensure that women, minorities, and are really getting the best chance to succeed, and if the best placement for that is in, I don't know, possibly a Unit B in a union contract, then maybe we should really look at it from that angle, that we are permitting everyone a chance to thrive and inclusivity. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Strezzo. That item is approved and referred to the Committee on Housing and Community Development.
And that will bring us to item 6C, a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on February 21st, 2023.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Finance Committee met Tuesday night for 3 hours and 2 minutes with all 5 committee members present. We took up an agenda with just 5 items on it, but 2 of those were extremely important items. Clerk Wadzowski wrote up some top shelf minutes that I'd encourage everyone to read for additional color. I do want to give some key details here tonight to colleagues not on finance. I will try to be briefer than 3 hours and 2 minutes. We recommended that you approve tonight 2 grant acceptance items for the fire department for maritime-related equipment and residential lock boxes, and the lease agreement between the city and the MBTA for the Community Path Extension, or CPX. No doubt you've all been getting the same steady diet of CPX inquiries from constituents that I've been getting. This is a really positive step forward, given that that lease agreement is looking set here to hopefully be approved tonight. It'll allow the city to start up with some work, adding much-needed lighting. There are some very dark stretches to the CPX currently. We'd love to see improved with lighting. It also allows the city to start looking at the safety and signage situation on the CPX. And this is important that there's still GLX contractors, GLX Constructors, the contractor doing the Green Line extension work, is still working on this. They've pushed the project opening date back as a result. They're saying spring, which I guess could mean as late as June 20th if you want to get technical. The committee had a productive discussion about that 107-page lease agreement. Councilor Scott asked some excellent questions about the future CPX access points, in particular Poplar Street. The good news there is that this lease agreement won't get in the way of a future new access point there. Councilor Kelly asked about the inception period, we're calling it, for this lease agreement. It's basically a 2-year period of observation that gives an opportunity for the terms to be revisited to address any new concerns that arise. Councilor Pena-Neufeld inquired about maintenance, snow removal, and public art. We were told that the city is responsible for maintenance, aside from structural elements like retaining walls and viaducts that are the MBTA's responsibility, not the city's. The city is going to try to keep a path open, keep the path open after snow events. They might need to close stretches of the CPX after large snow events just because of some difficult logistics in some stretches of that where there's just no room to put the snow on the sides. And then there was a discussion continuing with the MBTA about public art and other components. We expect to see some artwork added, notably at Gilman Square. There was talk of the need for benches in some locations that make sense, and just for wayfinding signage as well. Councilor Klingon then asked about first responder concerns and emergency call boxes. The fire department's going to use gators for access to some of these stretches of the CPX. They're sort of smaller vehicles that could fit on the path, whereas bigger vehicles would not be able to pass. And we will have the option to store a gator locally in the maintenance shed at Poplar Street that has been worked out. Call boxes are being installed now. That's part of the remaining work by GLX Constructors that has pushed back the opening to the spring. And then I spoke about my concerns about safety, specifically around speed, given the narrow, confined nature of the CPX and some turns, and it's a very different animal from the current community path. So after talking to the community, basically I'm willing to give people a month or two to sort of like see what it's like with their own eyes, and hopefully that increases support for regulation and education around speed and just improved signage. And then the main event on Tuesday night was the UCTIF presentation for 299 Broadway. That's the former Star Market site in Winter Hill. That consisted of a presentation by city staff, a public hearing, and then committee discussion. Director Ned Carney presented, given a high-level overview of the site background and the substantial UCTIF documentation. Basically, this is authorization for the mayor to enter into an agreement with the developers. The UCTIF is basically a 20-year tax break on improvements to the property. And there's currently, the agreement that we were given currently has a 100% exemption for 20 years. That could be lowered, we learned, if costs decrease in the next 18 months before construction's scheduled to begin. Staff will come back to the council with final numbers, either for confirmation that is the full amount that's going to be needed, or if it turns out we need less, they'll come back with new numbers prior to the first vertical building permit being issued. The city will continue, this is important, the city will continue to receive property taxes on the $4.3 million base value during this UCTIF period. So it's not like we're getting nothing for it. We're getting basically the same amount that we currently are getting on what's there right now. Then the zone, also, this is important, the zone could be expanded down the road to include 313 Broadway, that's the liquor store, 9 Temple Street, that's the barber shop, and also then potentially affordable housing development on the smaller parcel on Sewell Street. So that's also possible down the road. We then conducted the public hearing. We had 6 members of the community speak. Comments are captured very well in the minutes. I'd characterize them as being generally supportive with some specific concerns. We left that public hearing open until noon today. There were no additional comments on that. The committee then discussed with city staff and consultants, and Councilor Scott inquired about the process and criteria in the agreement around the transfer of property to other entities. Everyone understood the need for liquidity events in a project like this, and we will hear shortly that Special Counsel Salkert and city staff were able to work with the developers to address those concerns ahead of tonight's meeting. Councilor Kelly asked about the contingency plan if the shortfall ended up being greater than the maximum TIF amount and what tools were available at our disposal. Director Ned Carney addressed some of those possible tools and specifically mentioned the Affordable Housing Trust. Councilor Kelly then pointed out that the Affordable Housing Trust hasn't been approached yet about this and hasn't weighed in on it at all. There was a moment of refreshing honesty in response to one of Councilor Kelly's questions about the market rate unit rents, where the developer talked about their desire to eventually raise rental rates on the market rate units when the market supports this. Then Councilor Klingon asked about funding options for remediation. Director Galgani indicated that funding sources might be possible, but any funding that we were to get would likely be under $1 million. I then voiced support for using any unneeded portion of the UCTIF when they come back to us for basically subsidizing things that we want to see in this project, things potentially like, I'll just mention local hire, or prevailing wage. And then I asked about basically the UCTIF won't kick in until there are 2 things that happen. The first is a 92% occupancy threshold for the market rate units. And the second is that the vertical building permits are issued for the affordable units. I was very curious about this because it's basically, if we, my question was basically, is the UCTIF, prior to the UCTIF kicking in, will the property then begin to be taxed on the improvements that are in place? Basically, that creates the incentive for the developer to want this, to fill that market rate building and want the UCTIF to kick in. There was a slight disagreement on that between the assessor's office and other staff. In the end, the judgment was yes, that we will need to start taxing on those improvements until the UCTIF kicks in. Councilor Scott raised the question of possibly an ongoing occupancy threshold, and we'll get into that momentarily, but there was a request for, some sort of ongoing mechanism there, something to gauge the ongoing occupancy rates there. In the end, there were 2 requested changes to the agreement. Councilor Scott introduced a resolution for an amended UCTIF agreement that we approved unanimously, and with the promise that an amended agreement would be introduced, we discharged this item without a recommendation. We're going to get into right after this, we're going to take up that item. You'll hear all about the changes. But I ask that you accept this committee report as submitted, and then I have a procedural motion on the item discharged without a recommendation and replaced by item 10.2 on tonight's agenda.
Does that sound like the appropriate course of action, Clerk Wells? Thank you very much, Councilor Wilson. So the report is submitted. Is there a discussion on the report? Seeing none, the report is approved and requires a roll call, is that right?
Yes, so the first thing that we'll do is put item 22-2041, approval of the Alternative Transportation Corridor Lease Agreement with the MBTA before the council.
On that item?
On that item, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor and 2 absent, that item is approved.
Excellent. And the draft of the UCTIF that was discharged with no recommendation, we will place on file.
Excellent.
And we will now take up item 10.2, which is a modified version of this TIF document. It's my understanding that there is staff present to explain the changes. Is that right, Ms. Singh?
We do have some staff attending virtually as well.
Excellent. The council, there's a memo attached to this that explains those changes, and if you wouldn't mind just walking us through those changes, please.
And I'll read item 10.2 for the council. It's
Thank
a
you.
request of the mayor requesting approval of the Urban Center Housing Tax Increment Financing Zone Plan and Negotiated Agreement for Winter Hill.
Excellent. I see that Director Ned Carney is here. Director, the floor is yours. Try again.
How about now?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Apologies that I can't be with you all in person. I am on baby watch and therefore avoiding ice and snow. Wanted to give you all a quick update on the amended version that you have before you. We've really made two substantive changes, as Councillor Wilson outlined. The first was to revise that equity transfer should there be a liquidity situation, revise the language around that. That is now section 7.5. With that, there was a request, there was a lot of discussion at the conversation on Tuesday about ensuring that should there, basically this is the situation of if there's a liquidity situation where there needs to be some opportunity for a developer to transfer the property without city approval. In most cases, it would be with city approval, and realistically, both developers did state on Tuesday night that they are intending to hold the property in long-term and be the long-term operator throughout this period. But in that unlikely circumstance where the property did need to transfer without city approval, the discussion on Tuesday was really about what are our parameters around that. And so the parameters that we had started with were that this needs to be a developer that can take on the property that really has a good track record of managing properties. And so what it had said before was that it needs to be a property owner that has at least 1,000 multifamily units that they've managed and owned over the last 5 years. And what we've added to that is that they also need to be in good standing when it comes to health and building code issues in not only the city of Somerville, but also our neighboring cities of Medford and Cambridge. So we've added that in, along with the other additions we made there was that this is all in Exhibit E, page 23, that they also need to, of course, not be in default on their taxes or have, been behind on payments, in violation of any affordable housing agreements, since that's so critical to this project. So that's the first substantive change. The second substantive change was an added section 7.6. Again, this is what Councillor Wilson outlined already, but that is really to add in that requirement for annual occupancy information every year after the UCTIF begins for both components of the project, just to see how occupancy is going on both cases. In addition to that, there were some Scrivener's changes that were found and updated just to make sure that we captured everything as we were going through this last update. And happy to answer any questions.
Director, congratulations on being on baby watch. We're very happy to hear that. Are there questions from the council? Councillor Scott. Yes, questions, comments are all in order. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. President, and of course, thank you to Director Nakarni and all the city staff that were with us on Tuesday night. I know I can be a stickler for the details, Mr. President, but I think truly this resulted in some very positive change. I think it's important that we celebrate the wins, and just at its baseline, this is a huge win in terms of providing new affordable units for the city. I want to compliment my colleagues on the council who asked some excellent questions. And, I know from the very first time that this idea was presented to the council, there were a lot of ideas about how we might be able to extend the benefits to the city and expand the protections for both the taxpayers and the residents of the city. So I'm very proud that the detail-oriented review has led to several changes here, in particular noting that the city will still have a hand in most of these transfers, but at least has a backstop that the property in the future, first of all, cannot be transferred until after construction of these buildings are completed, and secondly, that it will not go to the most flagrant bad actor. So I would encourage our residents of the city of Somerville to continue to report your landlord if there are deficient conditions in your building. At the very least, it might ensure that another 250 units don't end up transferring to that person. I also want to thank the developer for their honesty and really everybody for working together on this thing. And I want to highlight the piece around additional reporting. Now, this is where I have to say, once again, that we should celebrate the wins. It is unheard of for the city to be able to have actual occupancy data and requirements on a building. And so, we have ensured that the tax benefits do not accrue to this building until you get 92% of the units filled. That's great. That actually means that the benefits of increased housing are actually going to folks here in Somerville. Those units are being filled. It's not a warehousing situation like you've heard about in Manhattan, downtown Boston, other places. But part of what this rigor is intended to do is also to future-proof the agreement. While there is an ongoing reporting requirement, I want to make it clear that this ongoing reporting requirement, despite my best efforts, is not a gating factor for receiving the tax benefits in future years. So if the occupancy of the building does drop below 92%, they will still continue to qualify for these tax benefits, but at least we will know. And hopefully, some future administration and city council will be paying attention to that and apply whatever pressure is possibly available to ensure that these units aren't sitting empty, that just to provide a tax write-off or extra inflated line on somebody's balance statement. So with that said, again, I want to thank my colleagues for their forbearance in my extensive questioning. I want to thank city staff, our special counselor Salkert, who has been incredible throughout this process, and honestly developers for their willingness to work with the council on this. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Scott. Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I want to thank my colleagues. I just want to thank Councilor Scott for those catches on the document. We want somebody that's investing in the community to come in and build. We're not looking for somebody to just flip over these properties and so on. So this is a really important piece, the occupancy piece. I'm curious to know if we can make sure that they maintain a certain percentage of occupied units in order to continue to receive the tax benefit. For instance, if they go below 50%, I mean, what is that signaling? Are they, emptying the building to sell it, or like what is exactly what would be a cause for that to happen? So I just want to have that discussion because I am curious. All this talk of sort of selling buildings, coming in, investing, and then selling these buildings. It makes you, this is housing we're talking about. So we're trying to stabilize housing. And so I feel like, if there's a way to bring some stability, that doesn't seem like a really unreasonable thing, but maybe it is. And, again, there's too many benefits in this project to just, it's not something that I'm willing the hill I'm willing to die on, but I am curious to know if that's been discussed, because I haven't, this is literally in the last 24 hours. Like, we went through we got the documents, a few days went by, we went through the documents, and then we had at the meeting, and some of these things were brought up, and they were, addressed in the last 24 hours. So I guess it's more of a question to Director Narkani, as far as the applicant's willingness to maintain a certain level of occupancy.
Director Nadkarni, can you speak to that?
Yes, just checking. And we do have representatives from the developer and as well as special counsel here. If there's any other questions, and we can certainly turn to them as well. But our take on this is that, and we did have this discussion in the last 24 hours, as Councillor Klingon mentioned. The concern here is really sort of that there's the appropriate number here would be really hard to pin down. Particularly 92% we definitely felt was too high. There's a challenge here in that there might be reasons why the occupancy does drop, right? So something like if there's a flood, minor fire, those kinds of, or just general renovations. We're talking about a 20-year period, right? So there might need to be renovations to the kitchen or the bathroom or something like that that pulls units out of circulation for a period of time, and that can drop down that occupancy number. The other thing we are concerned about is that, we've just been through COVID. COVID did drop occupancy standards across the whole region. And so, a lot of buildings were sitting empty just because that was the circumstance. We also want to recognize that, the intent, right, of a market rate developer is that they are trying to make money, right? That is the goal, right? The market rate role, that's the role of the market. And so they are going to have the incentive sort of built in. We talked a lot about this on Tuesday as well in other contexts, that there is an incentive that really exists already to keep occupancy as high as possible. Normally, we would expect that you would be above 92%. You'd be more like 95%. But there are those circumstances that we don't know that we can predict well enough to put this at risk.
Mr. Klingon?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate, thank you, Mr. President, through you, and I appreciate, the developers' desire to make money, and I appreciate the different circumstances that arise. I was thinking like 92% would be where the tax break would kick in, but then if they were to fall below a certain rate, that may become an issue. Like, I can't imagine a scenario where they'd fall below 50% occupancy, even if they're redoing units and so on. So I didn't know if that was something we could build in. I just don't want to see somebody empty out the buildings and then sell it, and then we have empty buildings, and we have Cobble Hill, and we have this, and we have that. And I just, if we're going to invest like this, I think that, I want to see the developer invest in the community as well. And again, this isn't a sticking point. I don't think you really addressed what I'm saying is the 92% would kick off the tax credit break, whatever you want to call it, and then there would be a sort of a low threshold where they wouldn't go below. So essentially to, prevent from emptying the buildings and selling them off or whatnot.
Director, do you want to follow up again?
I would recommend actually, so we do have representatives of the developers here, and they would be happy to speak to this point. If
certainly.
For the clerk's purposes, the name you're looking for is Damian Chaviano. That might be the most direct way to answer Councillor Klingon's question.
Yes, certainly. There are folks from Mark Development here wishing to speak.
Great. Thanks for having me. This is Damian Chaviano, principal at Mark Development. I think that, the last couple of years, if they've taught us anything, I think that the examples we've lived through, I think Rachel, alluded to a COVID or a pandemic experience, coupled with what I would say are major macro headwinds. Councilor Klingon, I can completely appreciate your perspective, but I will tell you, in our world, in the capital market space as it relates to lenders and investors, sometimes perception becomes reality. And so a fear that a default be triggered here by some sort of uncontrollable event of ours, I think would be an incredibly difficult sell to the world that we need to appease at the end of the day to get this project going. I think we've been very clear about our concerns already about some of the uphill lifts we have. As we've alluded to, having no parking on this site is very much a pioneering component of this project, which we think is going to be a challenge out of the gate. But to add this as one more layer of complexity, I think will pretty much keep us, in a place where we won't be able to move forward. So we're trying to be really thoughtful. I think, as Rachel alluded to, the last thing we want to do is find ourselves in an economic situation where we're not incentivized to make money, which I think you would agree with. But it's really hard to guess as to what that percentage will be that folks will be comfortable with when we go out and start having these discussions about financing this project. So it's an incredibly difficult time to be thinking about this, and I recognize your concern. I think it's a fair comment. We've tried to give you numerous protections and commitments, and I think you've seen our team in action. But to create a threshold where this could trigger a default, again, no matter what the percentage might or might not, I think is going to cause real agita, particularly with what the last 2 or 3 years have taught us. So, we're trying to be thoughtful, and we're trying to limit how much, we lead with our chin on this project. And I think this is going to be one that's going to make it really difficult to move forward.
Councilor Klingon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the developer team. I just had to ask, maybe it's just a more, I know Robert Gorf, I read a great story actually about it today, about Newton, about converting a hotel into possible shelter. And so, I know that, he's a decent man, and I just hope that, he's in this for the long haul, in this community for the long haul. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for sharing all the information that you're going to share, and with as Councilor Scott has worked out. I'm pretty happy otherwise with everything, so I'm looking forward to moving forward. I had to ask on record, just because it just sounds so scary to people. Here, come move in, but I don't know. It's just, we're always looking for stability here. But thank you all, and thanks for answering the question.
Do I hear a motion? Councilor Scott.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I really appreciate the discussion. I think there's something everybody in this room would love to see on this deal, but I think it was engaged in good faith and with an unusual amount of goodwill and partnership from the developers. I appreciate the willingness to turn around in 48 hours to repair some problems with these contracts, which I can honestly say would not have happened a year ago on a deal like this. So with all that said, I would like to move for approval.
On the motion, I rise in support myself. Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to declare victory on this one before the actual vote, but as a resident of the neighborhood, I want to take a moment to thank Councilor Klingon for making this an absolute top priority of his during his time in office. I want to recognize his work over the years as a constituent of his to get us to this point where we're on the brink of a really transformative change to a large property in a really prominent location that's been vacant and blighted for 15 years. It's also a testament to my neighbors who, despite that pockmark on our neighborhood, never got desperate, never settled for less. And I think this is a great story of perseverance paying off, and for a community not settling for less. It's not perfect, but it's pretty damn great, and I can't wait to see this come to fruition in my neighborhood.
Thank you very much, Councilor Wilson. Councilor Burnley, then Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Chair. I won't speak nearly as eloquently as my colleague just did, but I want to second everything he just said. When I first came to Somerville, I was also a constituent of Councilor Klingon, and I lived very near this site. And you know, it being empty would cause a lot of issues just for me in terms of getting food, figuring out where to go. And I know that that has been a concern on Winter Hill for many, many years. Many of the friends I initially met when coming to this community hadn't been able to go into that Star Market since they were children, which, you know, may not be the case for some of my colleagues. But, you know, I think that this is quite frankly going to be really transformative for our community, and I'm looking forward more than almost anything to being able to walk down to the site as it's been described throughout this project, which I know, again, the councilor has been working on since before I was on this council. And I think people are going to be very happy with where we end up here. And I hope it just brings everyone closer together. Thanks.
Councilor Burnley, thank you. Councilor Klingon, and then Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just on the motion, I also want to thank, first of all my colleagues here, past colleagues and present. It is a little weird to kind of talk like this is some sort of victory talk, because until shovels, and this still has, there's still some definite hoops that this has to jump through. Although I have the utmost faith in the development team as well as the city staff. Although we will miss Rachel as she goes out, but that's, that's awesome. But that said, I also am very excited to see this neighborhood transform right from the beginning of just based on the neighborhood plan and what the feedback. I always say that I've gotten really repetitive with this, but I really do look forward to having. We don't have the benefit of the extended sidewalks like East Somerville has or other parts of the city has, and we do have a really sort of fast-moving Broadway hill, people coming down the hill or up the hill, and it would be really nice to just get something off of that sort of boulevard feel and into a space where one could enjoy an ice cream cone, maybe if if an ice cream place moves in there, or have a coffee and just say hello to their fellow neighbors, and then of course the affordable housing. I think of people like Van Hardy, who was to this site even before my time in office, and just him and Mary Jo Conley and SEC's fights for affordable housing and making sure that this is a benefit for all the community of this space. We've come a long way, and I look forward to, like I said, when the shovels are in the ground. But I'm really happy to be here today at this point, and I want to thank you all, and thanks to the mayor as well, and in the previous mayor. That is all.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just sitting here listening to people talk, thinking about the idea of soft power. And, when we're talking about this charter reform in the city council and learning and seeing how little power we actually have, actual hard, tangible power, and to see what Councilor Klingon has done with this, with no true authority to do anything. You did not have the authority, Councilor Klinger. You had no authority to call the property owner and say, please get to work. You had no authority to really negotiate with developers and make this happen. There's no actual written authority that made you able to do this. You did it through soft power and through advocacy and activism, which is what inspired me to get into office. I think almost everybody around this horseshoe was involved in activism and advocacy before ever thinking about running for office. So I'm very proud of our colleague and for everybody who made this happen. And I just think it's a great thing to know, seeing this building, this lot vacant for decades, and to know that someone had to pick up the phone and connect the dots and make that happen. Even if no one gave him the power to do it, he made it happen. So it's not too bad for a full circle kid, Councilor Klingon. I'm very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll just say, across the political spectrum here in Somerville, the thing that I hear the most is we should spend more money on affordable housing. That is what this is, just plain and simple. It's an UCTIF. Who's ever heard of that, right? It's a tax. It's complicated. No, it's not. The city is choosing to invest money that we could spend on other things into affordable housings. that is something to celebrate, in addition to all of the wonderful points that you all just made. So let's call the roll.
So this is on item 23-0294, and I want to call your attention to the fact that there are two parts to this roll call. So the first is on the approval of the Urban Center Housing Tax Increment Financing Zone Plan and Form of Agreement, and also authorizing the mayor to execute an octave agreement between the City of Somerville and 299 Broadway Property Owner LLC as outlined. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is approved. And that will return us to the regular order of business, I believe. And item 4.2, an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Director of Health and Human Services create and distribute an outgoing participation survey for participants of the Teen Snow Shoveling Program.
When I heard it was a 2-part roll call, I thought we were going to have to vote twice. So that was great.
That's why I said it.
Congratulations all, and thank you to all the staff. And on to that item. Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this was discussed in Housing and Community Development, or it came up as an idea that is the teen shoveling program, is there room to modernize, or not modernize because it's fairly modernized, but update really how we're serving our constituents? Is the cost of every time a teen comes to shovel, is that equitable, and can residents, senior homeowners, or those that have ADA needs, is the cost that we're charging for seniors or anyone who needs the service, is it too much? I think an outgoing survey will help determine that. And also, where are the teens of this? Are they happy? What could help them succeed and thrive in this position as well? Thank you. Can we send this to HCD?
The item is approved and referred to the Housing and Community Development Committee.
Thank you.
Item 4.5 is a communication by Councilor Strezzo conveying a report of the Children's Cabinet meeting of February 14th, 2023.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. So, colleagues, I wanted to quickly update you on latest conversations happening with the Children's Cabinet. This was an important meeting because we were checking in on how we were serving our youth and all departments that affect the lives of our youngest constituents. And I want to give you some of the things brought up. So some of the members of the Children's Cabinet said that that families are generally happy with what is available if families can get access to the programs, transportation. So we have the out-of-school time service delivery happening. There are some barriers. Transportation is a problem, and I'm not sure if you were aware of this in Somerville, but there's frustration that perhaps the lack of state and federal infrastructure and bus routes somehow is a barrier to being able to get across the city. No kidding. But that, of course, the MBTA passes have been provided for middle schoolers. But if you can't catch the bus in the time you need it, what still work to be done on that. With registration, access, the online registration system can be a barrier, but in-person bilingual enrollment in activities inventories were very successful last year, and they should be a key component to our framework moving forward as we do that. Coverage before school time is not covered, and that's extremely challenging to Somerville families. There's going to be a lot of conversations coming up with that as Councilor Gomez-Mucad has brought up, but also there's a need and a want for that in our community. The school time ending of community schools is earlier than most parents' work days. For anyone that isn't aware, school ends at 2:35, and a lot of parents and guardians work till 5 or have competing times. So what do you do when you have to pick up your child and there's a shortage of out-of-school time or slots, and you have no place to place your children, but you have to work till 5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a problem that's been dumped onto parents and guardians' laps to just figure out. And the Children's Cabinet is really trying to work hard to help plug in that gap and fix that barrier. Affordability of the programs is also a huge barrier despite cost-reduced slots offered. And as we talk about budget requirements and budget suggestions going forward and ARPA funds, I'm really impressing upon you colleagues that to put this on your radars of the need for out-of-school time and the need for funding for programs serving our youngest constituents and how vitally important this is for families, for children, for guardians in this community. Providing cost-reduced or full tuition assistance to families would be helpful. There are not enough slots for all children to attend, yet the number of slots has expanded significantly. First come, first serve is emphasizing outreach barriers, and some are promised paid to hold slots in our partner centers like CAS to reserve them for our financial assistance participants prior to applications opening, and a successful model will include reserving affordable slots in out-of-school time before registration opens. Identifying space availability is really difficult because of lack of collaboration between space owners and school principals are often not included in the out-of-school programs that use their school site and do not have an integrated vision of out-of-school time within the school, so we need to collaborate with school leaders. Staffing capacity is limited. That's another huge barrier with serving our youngest constituents and our families and guardians. And we need to really expand that, and we need training of out-of-school time staff. Also, I want to bring to your attention special needs, that not all sites are staffed to equip to provide for IEPs and children that have special needs. There's still a lot of work to be done on that. OST and summer programs, there's concern over what the special education department is planning for in the year to come under direction of a new superintendent, and also new directors in that department. We can use this as a model to create a system of support for out-of-school time providers, empowering them to take on students with IEPs. Again, there is a lot to be desired at this point. We still have to build that up. There is a need for programs with both structured and drop-in activities, and kids want a space for children to speak up for themselves. I cannot emphasize that enough. The Teen Center may be a good place to develop mentorship opportunities, and to address truly out-of-school time as in post-graduation transition. Let's see. One more point I wanted to bring up. So actually, I'll stop there, and I'll submit this in the notes. You can read it for yourself, or to our clerk for you to read for yourself, colleagues. And happy to follow up on this. Thanks a lot for indulging me in discussing this.
Thank you, Councilor Strezzo. That item is placed on file. Clerk, can we please take up the next two items together?
Item 4.6 is an order by Councilor Kelly that this council discuss alternative emergency response methods with local mental health providers. And item 4.7 is an order by Councilor Kelly that this council discuss alternative emergency response and or other non-police emergency response methods that other municipalities have pursued.
Councilors Burnley and Wilson would like to sign on. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like both of these items sent to Public Health and Public Safety for further discussion. I know I've mentioned this a few times, but on Monday, we're going to be having a really robust committee meeting, including a presentation from mental health providers from here in Somerville about, their perspective on the alternative emergency response conversation that we've been having, as well as a panel of folks from 4 different municipalities who have pursued and implemented an alternative emergency response. I'm really hoping that the committee will take into consideration what those folks say in other communities and also consider what pieces we think could be relevant here in Somerville. One thing that I've really struggled with during this conversation that we've been having for the past few years around alternative emergency responses is how unique and different and special Somerville is. And yes, all 83,000 of our residents are unique and different and special, but the problems that we face are not. The problems that we face are fairly universal. And so seeing other models and how they work and how we could take them wholesale or piecemealed and apply them to our own community, I think will be really impactful and hopefully eliminate some of the barriers that we've faced in trying to implement an alternative emergency response or really make progress on that. So I hope my colleagues either tune in after the fact or during the meeting, and hopefully this will be all around a really great learning opportunity for us as counselors who will be hearing from both people in our community and people outside of our community. So if you can send these to committee, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Kelly for being willing to host this upcoming discussion in public health and public safety on Monday night. My recollection is this body expressed support, I believe unanimously, for unarmed civilian response during the previous budget process. As Councilor Kelly mentioned, we hear all the time how Somerville's different, and I appreciate her pointing out that one possible outcome of this is that we can see the different forms that this has taken. We're bringing in, we've worked sort of together, putting a panel together. We were bringing in people from the local area, from the region, nationally, who've done this, who've implemented this, who've run these programs in their cities. And I just think that it's a great opportunity. I would encourage, as Councilor Kelly said, everyone to either tune in live or go back and watch the video. I think hopefully it lives up to expectations, lives up to billing, and could be a really positive step forward. I just want to say we ask a lot of our police when it comes to responding to our neighbors who are in crisis due to homelessness, mental health issues, or addiction. I do think it's admirable that so many of our officers do the crisis intervention team or CIT training, and that Somerville's a leader in this, with other police departments in the area sending their officers to our CIT training program. That matters. What I'd love to see is a response program where we can get trained clinicians out in the field responding appropriately in the moment to our community members in crisis. And we're going to explore the various approaches to that on Monday night. So again, I'd encourage everyone to check it out. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Those items are referred to the Committee on Public Health and Public Safety.
Item 4.8 is an order by Councilor Kelly that the Director of Finance provide a written report detailing all stabilization funds and the current balance in each fund.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you can send this item to Finance for discussion, that would be fantastic. I know we have quite a few items tonight that will be sent to Finance regarding the capital investment plan as well as the mid-year financial report. But quite frankly, this $39 million into free cash, I'm going to keep saying this number very loud so that people recognize that we have all of this additional money that we did not budget for in the FY23 budget. But recognizing that my assumption is quite a bit of that will end up in stabilization funds, so that we can get a real clear on the record, assessment of what's currently in the stabilization funds. So if and when those conversations come down from the administration about moving some of this $39 million into stabilization funds, we can get a sense of, well, what's already been put there and how much are we adding on. So if this can be sent to Finance so we can further discuss this, that would be fantastic.
Certainly. Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just very quickly, I'd also add to my colleague's point about this $39 million. In this agenda, we're talking about already moving $3.5 million of it based on mayor's requests. So if folks are paying attention to the money matters of Somerville, Massachusetts, money moves fast. It's important that this body takes its prerogative as oversight very seriously. I know a lot of my colleagues do, not an insult. As Joe Biden says, not a joke, not a joke. But yeah, this 39 after tonight could very soon be 34, then next meeting 30, the next meeting, who knows, 10. So I think it's really important that we, do our due diligence and figure out what the best usage of our residents' money is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Burnley. The item is approved to the Committee on Finance.
And the next item is item 6A, a report of the Charter Review Special Committee, meeting as a committee of the whole on February 22nd, 2023.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met last night for less than 3 hours, and substantive discussion happened on one balance of power item regarding the structures and processes around multiple member bodies, as well as several recommendations related to budgetary authorities, to the point my colleague was just making. Some of the highlights when it comes to the multi-member body, people were very complimentary of the improvements made in the language recommended. It was acknowledged, however, that there is still a problem with longstanding vacancies on these multi-member bodies, which encompasses everything from the planning board to various volunteer commissions in the city. Roughly 40% of those positions are still vacant right now. So there's large support for the language that's been recommended. There is some desire from some folks to go off and work on seeing what could be done on encouraging, providing a city council role in filling vacancies on these bodies. There was conversation about budgetary items, specifically around the budget timeline and structure of the budget season. The recommendations from the committee largely reflected the process that the City Council undertook in the previous budget season. The details are very deep in the weeds. I encourage everybody to watch that meeting. There was some desire by various members to try to get creative and expand the process to include some serious reallocation powers to the City Council. And so they're going off to work on getting creative on that, and hopefully we will hear back what they've generated between themselves, the administration, the legislative liaison, and we'll, I'm sure, discuss that in a future meeting. There was discussion of the ability to hire an independent city auditor and having that authority be with the City Council to hire that independent city auditor and to require that happen every year. That was actually recommended for approval, just adopting the language that the Charter Review Committee had put forward in their recommendation. And finally, discussion about the capital improvement plan and when the capital improvement plan would come before the City Council. Right now, it's been past practice to do it, and there's an ordinance requiring that it happen during budget season. This would enshrine that ordinance that I believe was written by Bill White. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Councilor White produced that legislation. This would take that intent in that process and actually enshrine it in the charter so it could not be removed by a simple vote, a simple majority vote by some future council, and with a minor edit for clarity at the suggestion of Councilor Davis and myself. So that was also recommended for adoption, and we will be reconvening in 2 weeks from that date. My apologies, the date I had listed on that slide is wrong. So the next Wednesday before our City Council meeting, we will be going back at it to more budgetary recommendations, and then moving forward into a category that I just like to call miscellaneous, which is other recommendations made by the Charter Review Committee. On the slides that are available at #CharterReform, tinyurl.com/#CharterReform, you can see our full schedule of anticipated topics for future meetings, and I anticipate this will go on until at least budget season, and God help us if it goes farther. So thank you very much, Mr. President. I ask that the report be accepted as submitted.
Thank you, Councilor Scott. The Report is accepted as submitted. Next item, please.
And the next item is item 6B, a report of the Committee on Confirmation of Appointments and Personnel Matters, meeting on February 15th, 2023.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. The CAPM committee met on Wednesday, February 15th for an hour and a half. All 5 members were present. We took up a number of appointments, which I'll walk through. We first approved the minutes from the last meeting. We started with, we had 4 constables on the agenda, only 3 were able to show. So we spoke to the 3 that had joined us. As a reminder, we have to reconfirm the constables annually. So we had a lengthy conversation with all 3 of these constables a year ago. So we were able to just get a few updates from them and move them forward relatively quickly. So Alan Bishop, Mary Battinelli, and Catello Battinelli the second were all recommended to be approved in a 4-1 vote, and then Darcy Haynes was not able to join us. So hopefully we'll be able to speak with Darcy at their next meeting. We then moved on to 3 appointments to the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Had really fantastic conversations with the 3 members that were there, both about their experience, what they're looking forward to doing, the focus and charge of the Commission, and like many of the folks that have come before this committee in the last year, just extensive experience and commitment to the city. So Deborah Haber was confirmed or recommended to be approved for confirmation unanimously. Pauline Downing also recommended to be approved unanimously. And Harriet Ranvig recommended to be approved unanimously. I recommend you all check out their resumes and statement of interests and the minutes. Again, we really got to know each member pretty deeply during the meeting, and want to thank the committee members for their excellent questions on the 15th. The last few items we took up, and we had 2 city clerks on the agenda. One unfortunately withdrew because you guys scared him off. But we did talk to and approve unanimously Michael Potier to the position of Assistant Clerk of Committees, and had a fantastic conversation getting to know Mr. Potier. And so unfortunately, F. Kelly Landolfi had to withdraw from the process. And the last item we took up was a written update from the Director of HR on the number of positions we filled in 2022 and the current vacancies. Councilor Wilson asked for a comparison of that data. So we marked it worked complete, but we'll be getting some updates offline emailed to us from the Director of HR with that item. And with that, I ask that the committee report be accepted as submitted.
Is there any discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the report is accepted. Thank you all for your work on that. That's exciting to see these approvals, especially in the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Next item, please.
The next item is item 6D, a report of the Committee on Land Use, meeting on February 16th, 2023.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee of Land Use met on February 16th. All members were present for a crisp 30-minute meeting. We discussed 3 items that were all voted unanimously in support. One was a planning board recommendation proposing a change to neighborhood meeting rules. This would basically allow the president of the council to appoint an at-large or abutting ward councilor to attend public meetings in lieu of the ward council being unable or unwilling to attend such meetings. That was approved unanimously with an amendment from the president to include abutting ward councilors as well as at-large. We had another item requesting an ordainment for 6.1 commercial district fabrication of the Somerville zoning ordinance to permit additional uses for ground story commercial spaces fronting a pedestrian street. This really came to origin because of a potential lawsuit in Gilman Square where a developer was claiming spot brought zoning against the city, and this negotiation, which was ordered by a judge to discuss for negotiation, will address that potential lawsuit and allow this person and other people to potentially build something besides fabrication on the ground floor retail level. So that was approved unanimously as well. And then we also had a ordainment to permit commercial signs by right. For those of you who haven't been a part of this process, the city previously had to go to the planning board or zoning board to get approval for a business sign, and I've experienced that myself where things will get rejected for really frivolous reasons, and the committee all seem to agree that maybe leave this in the hands of a professional who can decide what sign is appropriate, not appropriate. That was approved unanimously. Those were the items, and I submit the committee report for approval.
Thank you very much. Is there discussion on the committee report or on any of the ordinances? Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to our Chair of Land Use. Did you say the meeting was 30 minutes? I'm sorry, did I understand that incorrectly? What does that look
Well,
like?
recall, Mr. President, I run a tight ship, and that doesn't end when I'm the Chair of Land Use. They were very simple items and easy to accomplish.
Councilor Burnley, then Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, this is a question for the clerk, actually, that I could just ask privately, but I like to talk in open session. Do any of the changes around signage affect what would come through the Committee of Licenses and Permits? Because we do sometimes get some of that.
Through the president, this change would not. This affects the appearance before the zoning board for changes specific to the zoning ordinance. A license will still be required.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just in response also to Councilor Strezzo's question, I believe all these items, we previously discussed those, right, Mr. Chair? At a previous
We had a
meeting.
public hearing at the previous meeting, which was slightly longer.
Just to say, we're doing work in this committee.
That is true. Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. Further elaboration on that. I was being entirely facetious. I have been in land use and those 30-minute meetings they feel good. While at the same time, we very much have to get to a lot of meat to the important conversation. No need for further elaboration beyond that. Thank you.
And Clerk, we should also take up item 8.4, which is the planning board recommendation for these items, and place those on file, please. Seeing no further discussion, the committee report is approved, and we have to enroll and ordain some zoning ordinances.
So first on item 22-1645, enrolling an amendment to the zoning ordinances, section 15.1.3 for neighborhood meetings. On enrollment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is enrolled. On ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is ordained. The next item before the council will be item 22-1771, an amendment to the zoning ordinances, section 6.1, commercial districts, fabrication. On enrollment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is enrolled. On ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is ordained. I wrote a 7 instead of a 2. That was weird. The next item before the council is 23-0095, an amendment to the zoning ordinances, section 10.8 for commercial signs. On enrollment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Emphatically yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor and none opposed and 2 absent, that item is enrolled. And on ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is ordained. And that is going to bring us to item 6E, a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, meeting on February 14th, 2023.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am giving the report on behalf of Councilor Davis. We did not have a Rachel Ray style 30-minute meeting. We had a solid 2-hour meeting. We took up quite a few items, most of which stayed in committee except for one item that we'll need to enroll and ordain tonight. We discussed Councilor Burnley and Councilor Scott putting forward a whole bunch of items amending ordinances, the Code of Ethics, the Personnel Policy, the Fair Housing Code, to make sure that we're being as inclusive to family and relationship structures in the city of Somerville as possible. Councilor Burnley was able to bring Alexander Chen, who's from the Harvard Law School LGBTQIA+ Advocacy Clinic, to talk about the need for the city of Somerville to update our laws, update our ordinances, to make sure that we're including families and stepping in line with the similar domestic partnership ordinance that we passed several years ago. So that item did stay in committee for some discussions so that we can make sure that we're addressing every single part of the Code of Ordinances, so that it includes changing the language from relationship structure to family and relationship structure, et cetera, et cetera. There was a bit of concern from the administration when it comes to the implementation of this on the Fair Housing Commission, particularly because of the capacity to investigate complaints. That said, there was a bit of discussion around the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination and the complaints that are logged under that set of categories versus protected classes that the city of Somerville has identified. There are protected classes that fall under MCAD, and then there are even more protected classes that we as the city of Somerville have included. And this would be an instance of a protected class that the city of Somerville identifies that the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination does not identify as a protected class. So we've kept that in committee for further discussion, making sure we cross our T's and dot our I's. We then took up an item on addressing the surveillance technology impact report when it comes to tickets and camera enforcement and the parking sticks that we discussed in Davis Square, and trying to get those all around town so that we can have better enforcement of our traffic laws. There was quite a bit of discussion about the vendors' use of data and making sure that we have strong data sharing agreements so that data around parking enforcement isn't getting into the wrong hands and being used for malicious reasons, but that we are using parking enforcement data properly, and that the vendors that the city contracts with and has the privilege of working here in Somerville is responsible using their data as well. And then the last piece, which was pretty standard, was updating the fee schedule for the city when it comes to parking violations and traffic violations. So things like being in bike lanes or parking in a disabled parking spot when you don't have a pass for that, things like that, actually getting that passed, and that is the item that we will have to enroll and ordain tonight. And with that, Mr. President, I would ask the committee report is accepted.
On the committee report, Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm looking at the ordinance here with the fines in front of me, and I just want to point out, it just says on crosswalk $50, whereas the updated, as of July, the updated traffic regulations prohibit parking upon or within 20 feet of any crosswalk. I guess I'm curious if this is definitely not a gotcha question here. I'm curious if that came up at all. Is parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk, $30 or below, such that it doesn't show up on the schedule of fines, or is that an oversight not having that on there?
Councilor Kelly?
I don't know, and I don't want to pretend like I know. I don't know if we have the director of parking with us. I doubt it. This is a pretty standard item that we were going to enroll and ordain tonight. That said, I would say if you have concerns about this, we can obviously kick it back, but going forward and having a particular discussion on clarifying those items might be a better use of it. I know the committee did talk about some of these fines. For some, I'm not going to say for all, feel low for the grievances that people are committing. So there is definitely some interest in continuing to explore this ordinance more broadly.
Mr. President, I don't intend to hold this up tonight. I'm fine with letting this go through. I may submit something about revisiting that particular one. We hear about that a lot, and I think it's a key area where we can improve safety on our streets is by daylighting crosswalks. So, thanks.
An excellent question, and I look forward to hearing the answer as well. On the committee report, is there any further discussion? I want to add that I do not serve on legislative matters. I watched the discussion on the surveillance technology impact report for the parking sticks, and I really appreciated the committee's diligence on that. I think the surveillance oversight ordinance, it really does create an opportunity to kind of bring transparency to these pretty nuanced questions, and I just wanted to thank everyone on the committee for bringing so many thoughtful questions to that. I think it's a very interesting set of questions, and I'm glad that they're being discussed in public. Councilor Kelly?
And I'll just add to that, we keep going back and forth on this particular item. It obviously came up because there was a pilot program and trying to implement this more broadly, and part of the discussion that keeps surfacing itself is, well, why did we exclude this in the first place, and why are we including it now? And so I think this committee is going to keep expanding on the surveillance technology impact report as more surveillance unfortunately gets created. So.
Yes, and I'll just say on the merits, I know that I've received communications from the public having concerns about a third-party vendor being able to take pictures of license plates in Somerville, and what are they going to do with that data. I was really grateful that those questions were raised directly and that answers were provided that I personally found quite satisfactory, and I think that's exactly how this is supposed to be working in the best case scenario. So thank you again to the committee. And on the item that is now before us, well, on the committee report, that's approved, and the ordinance.
The item now before the council is item 23-0087, an amendment to the Code of Ordinances, Section 1-11, penalties and violations to codify traffic and parking fines. On enrollment, Councilor McLaughlin. Yes. Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is enrolled. On ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 9 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 2 absent, that item is ordained.
Excellent. Next item, please.
The next item is item 6F, a report of the Committee on Open Space, Environment, and Energy, meeting on February 16th, 2023.
Councilor Burnley?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Open Space, Environment, and Energy had a brisk 46-minute meeting for 4 items. No votes were taken. We had good discussion, especially around electrical vehicle charging, where we got into the different kinds of charging stations that exist, how best we can finance and charge for charging, and we look forward to continuing that discussion in committee when there are more answers, quite frankly, that we can rely upon. We also briefly touched upon the important conversation of composting, which I know many members of this body are quite interested in. there was no update regarding composting, but I'm hopeful that the next time it is discussed in committee, the administration will have a more expansive answer in terms of how much money has been spent in the city on composting, how trials went, what the timeline looks like for potentially expanding a pilot program in the city of Somerville. And with that, I ask that this committee report be accepted.
On the committee report, seeing no discussion, it is approved. Thank you. Next item, please.
The next item is item 6G, a report of the Committee on Public Health and Public Safety, meeting on February 13th, 2023.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a fantastic meeting of the Committee on Public Health and Public Safety with a special edition of Councillor Burnley serving for the night. We took up 3 items, marked them all as work complete, but the conversation broke down into 3 topics, one being the eradication of medical debt, the item that Councillor Burnley and myself and the entire council unanimously supported to abolish medical debt for our residents using ARPA funds. RIP Medical Debt came and gave a really detailed presentation of the work that they've done to eradicate $8.5 billion in medical debt, billion with a B, for more than 5.5 million families in the United States. This could be Somerville. Somerville could contribute to that $8.5 billion number. You know, he talked in depth about, you know, the impacts of medical debt on families, on community folks, the disproportionate impact on low-income people, on folks of color, on elderly folks, and ultimately the social determinants of health that positively improve when folks are free from the kind of shackles of medical debt that prevent them from living their lives, from enjoying their families, from spending their money on food, shelter, et cetera, et cetera. We did discuss the kind of difference between using ARPA funds or general funds for abolishing medical debt, and the folks at RIP Medical Debt identified that out of the 30 communities that they've worked with most recently, 28 have used ARPA funds and 2 have used general funds. So there, you can use a diversity of funds is ultimately what is being said. The next item we took up was regarding a timeline for the safe consumption site. I think, quite frankly, we're probably going to take this item up time and time again until there is real concrete steps moving forward. You know, the administration came before us and talked about a site visit they did to On Point NYC, which is the first safe consumption site in the United States that opened up in New York City, and the services that are provided there. It's, you know, almost a block large, several stories high, and a really incredible site, it sounds like, but not something that is going to be feasible here in Somerville. And so the administration discussed, you know, what are the baselines of services that we want to provide that are similar to some of the really state-of-the-art facilities that are offered at On Point, New York City. That said, there was no firm timeline. I think the committee was frustrated that that was the case, that there's no firm timeline in place for when a safe consumption site is going to be off the ground. That said, Director Carroll, who was there speaking on behalf of the administration, did say she was going to go back to the interdepartmental team and try to get a better explanation as to why we can't get a timeline. Part of the reason she cited was a complexity of the initiative creates barriers for a timeline to exist. But quite frankly, our residents want this, and there would be greater sympathy for the delays in the timeline if we had a sense of a timeline in general. But just saying we don't have a timeline, we don't know when we're going to have a timeline, doesn't give a lot of hope for folks. And then the last item we took up was regarding the administration's response to spiked drinks in the region and what we can be doing to better engage with that. You know, on the note of positive news, it does sound like the issue of spiked drinks has decreased substantially over the last several months. That said, Director Carroll is working with SPD and Tufts University and partners in the community to raise awareness and make sure that folks know what to do, that bartenders know what to do, and that HHS can work on making sure there's good signage if there is spiked drinks. So with that, I ask that the committee report be accepted.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Discussion on the committee report. Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the report. It's always good to hear what's going on in that committee. One note as well on the last item that you mentioned, Councillor Kelly, was the Licensing Commission actually sent out an advisory in early December of last year about drink spiking to all those that are licensed in Somerville by the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission advisory. As a reminder that this is happening, as a sort of moment to remind what their duties are as business owners, as staff and employees of our bars and other nightlife venues in Somerville. And so glad to see that there's been some work beyond both the licensing commission and of course the work happening on the ground with the police departments and with our small businesses. So I just wanted to share that as well as a kind of addition to the work that you guys have done.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you and talking about that concept, I feel like we need to take additional steps with that. And my vision, when we talk about drink spiking, is something similar to what Cambridge is doing. Cambridge's health department made mandatory signs throughout any establishment that serves drinks to make patrons aware of the fact that drink spiking occurrences are happening. So I'm happy to hear, and as the licensing commission did as well last year through the Boston region talking about drink spiking increases, that's more of an internal document, and we have to find ways to partner with our establishments. One example of that is what I've seen at the Foundry. In the bathrooms, there are signs that state, you go to the bartender and order an angel shot, and an angel shot, the bartender will understand what that means, and based on what you want to convey to the bartender, either you need a ride home, you need someone to walk you to your car or the train, or something similar, you feel unsafe, based on the code of drink you order, that was a elective decision that the Foundry chose to do. I think we need to have anybody that serves alcohol in our city make their patrons aware that this is happening. So I feel like we still have to take additional steps, outward steps into the community on this. So yes, and what else can we do further? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. To that point, we did discuss the idea of having kind of code names that are in businesses if folks feel unsafe when they're at a bar or restaurant. One of the issues that the director of HHS raised is that oftentimes those code words kind of expire at some point, and the folks who are looking to spike drinks learn about them and can potentially take advantage of that. So, whether it's the city providing small businesses that provide alcohol with little window decals like what we had during COVID when folks were pursuing a vaccinated status or wear a mask type situation. There are things that the city could produce and provide to business owners, but definitely getting creative and finding solutions seems like something we should all be on board with.
Was there another hand? Excellent. Thank you all. That committee report is approved. Next item, please.
Item 6H is a report of the Committee on Public Utilities and Public Works, meeting on February 13th, 2023.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, the committee met on February 13th. All members were present. Others present were Liaison Carrillo, Denise Taylor from Communications, and Clerk Wazowski. So the meeting was at 6:30 due to a public hearing that took place at 6 p.m. Regarding the franchise agreement with the city and Comcast and cable providers. There was some testimony. We heard from a few members of the community, but a lot of because of an exciting announcement earlier in the day, I think it put a lot of folks' concerns at ease in terms of the breakdown of the contract and so on. So I'll get back to the contract in a minute. I just want to work through some of the other stuff. Basically, the other stuff I put on the agenda was all pretty easy to respond to in writing. For instance, we had Councilor Strezzo's requests about the wires. They were taken down. Both of those poles were Verizon poles. I'm sorry, Eversource poles. There was a detailed maintenance plan for the armory, which we discussed that maybe, which is great and certainly necessary in terms of just the upkeep of the armory, but certainly there's a lot of other concerns regarding the armory and long-term plans and sort of maintenance as in structural plans. But Councilor Gomez Mocad was satisfied with this in terms of just, the day-to-day how DPW was handling the cleanliness and trash and so on of the building. So that's attached. And the other piece was from Office of Sustainability. They are now back to collecting waste every one Saturday a month. Saturday a month. It's attached to the minutes. The main event was about the franchise fees and the agreement between Comcast and the city. So in attendance to speak to that item was Director of Communications Denise Taylor. She again made that announcement formal from the mayor's office that they were going to give from here on out the full franchise fees collected directly to the Somerville Media Center going forward. So that's somewhere right now with the fees somewhere in the range of $600,000. Unfortunately, it keeps going down due to cord cutting, and I did ask if, whose fault is it that we can't get the fees on the internet? Is it the Communications of 1994 Telecommunications Act or what? What was it? Because we're certainly missing on a lot of cash there. But while we still have it coming in, the funding will go to full amount will go to Somerville Media Center, but in order to facilitate that, the administration is going to ask us to fund government TV and ed TV out of the general budget, the fiscal year budget. So, while this is really awesome to see for Somerville Media Center, hopefully this gives them the funding they need to either, find a new location, or even just in terms of operating, depending whatever happens with the current building they're in and the state of that, which again is a separate conversation from this, although tied together in terms of their ability to move and to survive. So this was a really great boost. But the city, there was a caveat that if we were to change our mind at any point about, as a council, like in terms of, or if the funding was to be, if we were to not fund Ed TV or GovTV in the future, they would resume taking their portion of the fees. So they've kind of built in a little bit of a insurance policy. But nonetheless, it was a great announcement, and it's a great move forward. That's really all there is to say on it. I mean, honestly, the Media Center is extremely happy about this. I hope that we continue to collect upwards of, over $500,000 a year that will go to them. But here we are. So, Director Taylor explained the rationale behind the mayor's decision was to propose moving, the education and funding. Questions from the chair with further discussion of previous contracts. Director Taylor said that Comcast has sent a legally binding communication that they will honor the previous agreement until the current license is removed. So, so they're still working out all the details, but that's the gist of it. Anybody has any questions? All the information is in the report, but I can answer some questions, and or you can go watch the video. And I ask that this report be accepted as submitted.
Another demonstration of soft power. Thank you, Councilor Klingon. The committee report is accepted.
Item 7.1 is a request of the mayor requesting approval of a home rule petition authorizing the city to appoint an alternate member to the Somerville Licensing Commission.
The item is referred to legislative matters. You're not going to just interrupt? Okay, Councillor Wilson.
I was gonna wait for you to start, per your previous request, Mr. President, to start introducing the item and yell over you. Yeah, I would move to waive the reading of items 7.2 to 8.3 and item 10.3 and request that these be sent to Finance. I'll note that Legislative Liaison Carrijo, President Ewan Campen, and I are finalizing how we want to structure the next Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, March 7th. The current favored approach is a 6 p.m. Finance Committee of the whole meeting, where we'll take up the CIP, the Capital Investment Plan update, the FY23 mid-year finance report, and the free cash update, followed by then a regular Finance Committee meeting with all the other urgent items in finance on that agenda. Also, I'd just like to note how pleased I am to see item 7.8 on tonight's agenda, appropriating over $800,000 for outdoor prefabricated toilet facilities. I can't wait to see these installed and opened in our city.
Councillor Burnley on those items.
Thank you. Through the chair, 7.8. That is super cool. Big fan of toilets. And in fact, last year I put in an item asking not only for there to be permanent porta potties near Seven Hills Park, but also for the administration to put forward a plan regarding creating permanent facilities across the city for porta potties, or in this case, prefab toilets. So I hope as a part of this discussion, we can talk about the larger needs for infrastructure across the city that allows all members of our community, and especially the unhoused community, to be able to find a safe and private space to handle all of their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnley. And on the schedule that Councillor Wilson raised, so as he mentioned, there's the capital improvement plan that I know many councillors, myself included, very much want to be present for. That's an important conversation. Among the items that I think are being considered for the normal Finance Committee later, that item, there are a couple of executive session requests pursuant to lawsuits. It is certainly within the right of any councillor, if you would like to have that be a committee of the whole as well, I think make a request of Councillor Wilson, and it will be considered. That is well within everybody's rights. If not, it can be a regular Finance Committee meeting as well. Those items are all referred to the Committee on Finance. Next items, please.
Item 9.1 is a public event from Union Square Main Streets for Union Square Farmers Market on Wednesdays, May 13th to October 28th.
Councillor Burnley.
Can we approve this? Thank you.
Motion to approve has been made. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, that item is approved.
Item 9.2 is a public communication from Somerville Stands Together, submitting comments regarding 311 employees' request to join the Somerville Municipal Employees Association.
That item is placed on file.
Item 9.3 is a public communication from the Community Action Agency of Somerville, submitting comments regarding the medical debt cancellation proposal.
Councillor Burnley.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I want to thank the cast for signing this letter and writing this letter in support of Councillor Kelly and I's proposal to relieve what I can now say is over 6,000 people's medical debt and eradicate over $11 million in medical debt in the city for what is at most about $250,000. As I mentioned earlier, the requests for funding out of our free cash from this meeting alone is about $3.5 million, which, if I did my math right, is roughly about 14 times the amount that it would take to relieve millions of dollars of medical debt for our residents. Again, this would be a life-changing program that the city could be running, and along with our community partners. And as Councillor Kelly mentioned earlier, there are various ways we could do it. We could be doing it through the $10 million that the city set aside for nonprofits. We could do it from the other $10 million in ARPA money that the city is, I suppose, just choosing who should get that funding. We could do it through our general budget, or we could do it through an appropriation any given meeting that we have, as we have, in this case, are attempting to appropriate about $3.5 million. So again, the logistics here, trust me, as someone who's been having these conversations behind the scenes for about 3 months now, there are some hurdles, but from the city side, all we have to do is make the commitment that we believe people deserve to have healthcare as a human right, that we will help them pursue that so that they can have affordability, housing, shelter, without the burdens of thousands of dollars of debt for something as simple as, an arm fracture, an unforeseen hospitalization. We can do that. And I will also, just as an update, say that I've heard back from one of the largest healthcare providers in our state that they have done their due diligence. They've isolated and identified all medical debt within the city of Somerville, and they are ready to talk to the city. Our partners are ready for this. We have the means to do it financially. We need to be stepping up and making the commitment to our people that their money should go back to making sure that they are safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. No further discussion. That item is placed on file.
Item 10.1 is an order by Councilor Gomez-Mocad and Councilor Wilson that the Commissioner of Public Works install high-visibility flexible bollards at all entrances to the community path from a vehicular road to prevent the entry of non-authorized vehicles into the path.
Councilor Burnley would like to sign on, as would I. Councilor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Gomez-Mocad for bringing this forward. We do get periodic, extremely concerning reports about vehicles attempting to turn onto the community path. I know there are different ideas out there on how best to do this, and that neighboring communities might have some good experiences with their approaches, like the one mentioned in this order. So I look forward to hopefully discussing this in traffic and parking if the President sees fit to send it there.
Thank you. Would you like this item to go to committee? Traffic and parking. Thank you. The item is referred to traffic and parking.
Item 10.4 is a public event. Paul Collier applying for a public event license for the Race of Ireland 5K on March 19th from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Councilor Burnley, would you like to speak on this?
To the chair? Sure, I can speak on this. Is there anything you'd like me to say? I'd like to move for the approval of, where are we? Oh, thank you. For specifically 10.4, because I am a big fan of toilet, also big fan of Ireland and 5Ks, and I think we should have them. Thank you.
The chair on licensing and permits has gone on record in favor of Ireland and 5Ks, and the item is approved.
That brings us to the end of our agenda for the evening, Mr. President.
Are there any late items?
There is one late item before the council. An order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Director of Parking replace the missing no left turn sign at the intersection of Mount Pleasant Street and Perkins Street.
Councilor McLaughlin?
I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I'll send it to traffic and parking, please.
Councilor Wilson would like to sign on. That item is referred to the Committee on Traffic and Parking.
And there are no further items before the council.
Colleagues, we are adjourned. Thank you all.